everyone. I have Fable with me here for once.
I'm sad, guys.
He's saying he's giving up on art. He's being, yeah.
No, no, I have to. One of my one of my fair growers has shown me the truth. I must surrender now. It was nice knowing you guys. Make sure to donate all your hard-earned money to me and not Mac. Thank you very much.
Oh my
Goodbye.
god.
I won't need it where I'm going, but still.
Oh my god, I'm not
Goodbye,
even
guys.
allowed money, huh?
Yeah, you already have enough in life. You have my followers. You stole them from me, you
No,
son
I
of a bitch.
didn't. I literally let
Yeah,
him introduce them too. Introduce.
You
Anyway,
stole them from me.
let's do this. Ready? I don't know what kind of crazy stuff Reggie is gonna do, but we're going to look at it. As we
Goodbye.
always do. And don't believe Fable, he's just going crazy again.
Nah, I just think it's time I quit again.
Also, I do need to watch some Bumbles McFumbles videos again, but they're really long. I know, I'm complaining about them, but they're for silly jokes, so I don't care.
In a world full of activism and eco-warriors, I'm worried that we've never taken the time to consider the societal advantages of
Mission
turning the
failed.
planet into a nuclear wasteland. Personally,
We don't
I
need
think
to
we
make
should
this
give
world
this
fall
pollution
out.
thing a chance. That's why for this challenge, I will use my colony of specially designed abhumans to generate and spread industrial amounts of pollution across the planet. But
Oh,
what does
God.
that mean? Well, in Rimworld, pollution is generated as an unwanted waste product from certain types of robotics and power generators. Now,
Alright.
a lot of people don't like pollution, and they'll tell you it's no good because it
Yeah.
alters the environment and leads to some very interesting
Oh.
evolutionary dead ends.
Oh.
Additionally, if you spend too much time in polluted areas, you will become mentally challenged and develop terminal cancer. I'm not
Oh.
kidding. But luckily for us, I managed to genetically engineer our colonists to benefit from toxic environments. Now, it's a bit of a zero-sum game when it comes to gene altering, so in order for us to become immune to pollution, we had to make a few sacrifices. For
that is?
example, we are all Precambrian hyper-aggressive inbred fatsos suffering from major cell instability.
Why?
But at least we can spit acid.
What?
But enough monologuing. Let's take
That's
a look at
horrifying.
these characters. First, we have our three starting mutants, Grim, Gnarly, and Biff. They're all dangerously overweight, but adequately skilled in fields such as farming, construction, and crafting.
That's
I selected our
good.
final character from the comment section on my last video. Unfortunately, I
Goodbye.
spelled his name wrong because, well, I was drinking, but it's too late to fix that now, so Clyert, Kylert, whatever, just consider it a cool dyslexic pseudonym. Kylert
Alright, then.
will be our leader as well as our head researcher. Technically, he's not a mutant, he's a waster, which makes him
Oh.
genetically superior to the rest of us, but he's also a filthy drug addict who will die if he doesn't ingest psychedelics on a regular basis.
Alright,
so we
then.
better get to work. We crash landed on our tile, and once we settled on a reasonable area to call our home, we christened it by placing an industrial strength pollution device. This one doesn't even do anything for us.
What?
No power generation, no fancy
It just
robots,
creates pollution?
just filthy pollution 24/7. With the ground now looking considerably more cancer-inducing, we are prepared to plant
Oh,
our crops.
Lord.
Toxic potatoes are the disgusting bastard child of the normal potato plant, and they have a very high chance of making us sick,
no.
but it's the only food we can grow in polluted areas, so we're going to have to get used to it. Additionally, we can grow some psychedelic plants which can later be refined in order to feed Kylert's metabolic drug dependency.
Oh,
Aside from this, we
God.
developed the usual trappings of any normal society, a research bench, barracks, and even a small chapel
Alright.
dedicated to the worship of environmental destruction. The first thing I wanted to research was the Tox generator. Not only does it produce electricity, but it also spews out enough toxic fumes to make you enjoy Amy Schumer's comedy.
Come, pussies.
That's a lot of toxic
Yeah, Amy Schumer was never funny. Like, never. Her one thing is jokes about sex. Jokes about her having sex. That's her only thing. I would never recommend her to a friend. Even someone that likes sex jokes, they're not even good sex jokes. Oh, dear God. Fable, are you there?
No, I'm dead.
Yeah, that Amy Schumer's comedy will do that to you. She's not funny in the slightest. I just don't understand why anyone would watch. Oh wait, I think she's in a rich family. That explains why she's getting so many chances to do this. Yeah, that would explain a lot.
Fumes to be inhaling,
Nepotism.
and our colonists are loving every second of it. You see, I want this entire map to be so goddamn polluted that enemy raiders will develop radiation sickness within seconds of arriving. And with
Good
this bad boy,
lord.
we can get there. The only issue is that unlike solar panels, these toxic power plants are distinctly non-renewable. Now, I'm not going to lie, despite my forklift certification, I don't really understand the science, but it seems like these generators are sucking the life force directly from the planet itself, because once all the tiles in their radius are fully polluted, the generator simply shuts off. We can't afford to have our power grid go offline that easily. So the key here is to use a pollution cleansing unit to offset the pollution produced by our generators, thus keeping a small pocket of the environment in a constant state of contamination and recovery. This will allow us to continue producing power indefinitely. It's kind of like using a defibrillator on someone just so you can kill them again. So that's great. We can keep our lights
That's
on thanks to a
horrifying.
perpetual cycle of
Why,
environmental
Reggie?
suffering. The only issue is the process
I
of
know
cleaning
why, but
pollution actually
still.
creates toxic waste packs. And since we optimized our power grid perfectly, we basically have an infinite supply of toxic waste. I don't know why we're containing class 4 carcinogens in a plastic garbage bag, but regardless,
Yeah.
I decided to store them in the freezer with our food until we could find a better use for them. I know, that seems like a bit of a convoluted way to generate electricity, but I'll tell you one thing, it fucking works. Yes, I can already feel it. The air has the same thickness as a jar of cigarette-flavored peanut butter, and it feels amazing. But while I was enjoying the process of developing brain cancer, I realized something was wrong. Some of our
Yes?
crops had started to die because apparently they weren't polluted enough.
Wait.
You may recall the first thing we
Polluted
did when we
enough?
got here was to create a pollution machine to toxify this entire area. I figured
Yeah?
we didn't need the machine anymore, so I just kind of got rid of it. But as it turns out, these dirty
away.
rat bastard trees are actually capable of naturally filtering pollution out of the environment, and they're slowly pushing our borders back. Honestly, this is unacceptable,
We
and
gotta
I'm
destroy the
entirely
trees.
livid. Prior to this, we were at war with the environment in a more indirect sense, but now it's serious. I had the colonists
guns.
equip a couple of Molotov cocktails, and we started a tasteful amount of forest fires as retaliation against the trees. Consider this a warning, viewer. Trees are the enemy, and they are always watching. Be proactive. Fight back. The forests
no.
are on fire, and our air quality is finally at liberty to be as toxic as we want. I suppose it's worth mentioning at this point that while Kylert is totally immune to the harmful effects of pollution, the mutants are only resistant to it.
Oh.
Meaning that if we don't take proper measures, eventually they'll all become terminally autistic.
Oh, we're gonna die from this.
Fortunately, gas masks can reduce pollution intake significantly. This, in combination with our mutants' genetic resistances, allows the wearer to be essentially impervious to toxicity. The
bad.
issue is, we only have one gas mask. So
Oh.
until we can fabricate some more, it's going to have to be communal. Meaning that once someone develops critical levels of lead poisoning, they've earned a few hours with the gas mask. It's kind of like sharing an oxygen tank underwater. You're all probably going to get a little bit of brain damage, but at least you'll survive. Now,
You
in
can't
order to
do
produce
that.
more gas masks, we'll need some chem fuel, which means we're going to need some trees. Unfortunately, you may remember me flying into a blind rage earlier when I found out the tree population was trying to subvert our pollution plans. So the
Yeah?
map is looking pretty sparse on the wood gathering front. Luckily, we've managed to research a specific type of tree, the witchwood, which will grow in polluted areas. It's not a high-yield tree at all, but that's the price you pay when you're an eco-warrior like us. We planted about 100 trees to account for the poor yield, and while I was waiting for them to grow, I received a notification that Grim has developed dementia. From, natural causes, we'll say. Personally, I
Sure,
like to think of it
natural
as Grim
causes.
ascending to a higher level of consciousness, and sometimes he just likes to wander around and forget his own name. Either way, I decided to put him to work full-time in the chemical factory, since that seemed like a low-risk job for someone who is demented. As the trees
Sure.
finally started to grow, we had Grim turn them into chem fuel, and Gnarly used that in combination with some steel to create 5 gas masks. Now we don't have to worry about choosing between oxygen and brain tumors. I think our society is really shaping up. We are running into a small problem though. Some government bodies might refer to it as a starvation or even a famine. I prefer to think of it as extreme dieting, but either way, the lack of food is really aggravating our colonists. I began a hunting program to try to supplement the food
The guinea
supply
pig's
because
fable.
once people start having complete mental breakdowns, this game becomes 400% less enjoyable. This is is an entirely temporary solution, because the more homosexual frog chemicals we pump into the water table, the more we pollute the local animals, and eventually their meat will be so tainted it won't even be edible. But for the time being,
So, yeah. I don't think you could possibly make this work, because it's going to go terrible for you, so if you get rid of all the animals, you're probably done. Also, Fable has disappeared again. Oh, no.
Well, Mac, I'm gonna pull a certain boxing manga MC. I'm gonna retire, but then I'm gonna also be still upping my skills in the background, waiting for the day that all my friends die so I can come back.
I have no idea what you're referring to. Is that Hachino Ippo or something?
Yeah, that's literally what's going on in the series. I'm not even kidding. I wish I was. That's literally what's freaking going on in the series. He's coming back eventually. I even talked to a person that used to read the series when it first came out, like a long time ago. And I'm like, what's it? I asked him, what was it like continuing to follow the story after like 20 plus years? And he's just like, oh, it's nice being able to read it every weekend, but he's kind of getting tired of the current story that the creator's doing right now, which kind of sucks.
Yeah.
It's probably fine. We are now locked in a death spiral with the very planet we live on. We are trying to suffocate it through pollution, and it is trying to kill us through starvation. Only time will tell which side will prevail. But in the meantime, I thought we could engage in a productive little side quest. You see, years of hyper-aggressive inbreeding have led to our colonists looking intensely European, and I feel bad for them. However, all things are relative, and if we can make everyone else less beautiful, then we have effectively made ourselves more beautiful.
No.
For this reason, I've decided to kidnap anyone unfortunate enough to wander into our territory. Once captured, we will conduct a series of medical procedures to bring them down to our level. Oh, and look what we have here. Our first patients. We kidnapped them and whisked them away to our state-of-the-art learning hospital. It's a learning hospital because our only doctor is a retired bartender, and he's still learning this whole medicine thing. Now, thanks to the War Crimes 2.0 mod, we have an array of torture methods that would make even the CIA blush. For example, we could disfigure our patient with acid, but even I'm not that cruel. Instead, I opted to replace all of our patients' limbs with wooden logs and lobotomize them. Somehow the mortality rate for this routine procedure is nearly 100%, but either way, it's great practice for Kylert. Now, you don't need me to tell you this, but despite all of our humanitarian work, it's a cruel world out there. So it's time to start learning gun manufacturing. I'm not talking about making some pissy little revolver either. I'm talking about toxic miniguns. A lot of people think this eco-warrior thing is a metaphor. That's their first and last mistake. Kylert got to work on the research, and Biff crafted the gun. And in case you're wondering, yes, it is crafted from the toxic power plant waste. Technically, that counts as recycling. The next person that tries to audit our colony for a carbon tax will be receiving more depleted uranium than I—
Good lord. He really has turned the whole world toxic. Or at least he's planning to. Anyway.
Hey, Papa.
Let's head back in.
Iraq. And not only does it kill, it also pollutes. Once we get 2 or 3 of these operational, it's all over for the ozone layer. Additionally, I figured we could craft some tox packs, which are basically backpacks that deploy a toxic smoke screen in a defensive radius around the wearer. It's kind of like tear gas, except it also causes our enemies to go into organ failure. Between the miniguns and the tox packs, I think our military is in a great place. Now, aside from our recent advancements in gunsmithing and starvation, we do have some troubling news. Despite the hard work of our marketing department, no one seems to want to join the colony. Something about the air scorching their lungs, I don't really know.
I'm not surprised.
The point is, we need more visitors, and it's time to change our approach. Imagine this. Instead of seeing an advertisement to visit Florida, you are attacked in a parking garage by a man wearing a Hillary Clinton mask, and you wake up in Florida. Horrifying, I know, but effective. We will be adopting—
That sounds like a start of a horror game. Or you're just doing something and suddenly you're kidnapped and thrown into a part. I think that's actually a star of a few horror games that I know of. Where you're just trying to do something and then BAM! They come in. It's, yeah, not good. Not good at all.
this latter approach, but fortunately we'll only be taking you to a cancerous hellscape and not Florida. So we'll be kidnapping a few people, maybe making a few slaves, and sure, they'll have a hard time surviving the climate, but if they do a good job, they might be able to earn a gas mask, which they have tremendous incentive to do because it's Fallout New Vegas for as far as the eye can see.
I'm not
So
surprised.
with minigun in hand, we set out to look for viable candidates for forcible relocation. You might
Forcible
think
relocation.
non-consensual adoption is immoral, but isn't it more immoral to deprive our neighbors from experiencing the glory of this utopia? In your heart, you know this to be right. We traveled to a nearby settlement where we found a group of tribespeople that looked very susceptible to being shot into submission, and so we did just
good
that.
Lord.
And with 2 new recruits kidnapped, we made our way back to the septic tank that is our base. This was a phenomenal outcome. All we have to do now is break their will and formalize them as slaves. My favorite way of doing that is by giving them leather slave harnesses and seeing how long it takes them to figure out it's human leather. Fortunately, it didn't take long and they joined our colony. I assigned them to fairly menial labor such as harvesting crops, cooking, and cleaning. I'm not sure if cleaning is even possible when I'm spewing 8 kilograms
I don't
of
think it
chromium
is.
dust into the atmosphere every hour, but if nothing else, the constant uphill battle will build character. In addition to this, I found out that we can also host orgies at our church, and if
Oh my
they're
God.
fun or unforgettable, there's a 50% chance that a colonist of the same religion will join our colony. This is how we managed to recruit Jeb. Between kidnapping and government-mandated orgies, I think we're going to be a recruiting powerhouse. I gotta say, sometimes lobotomizing tribespeople and melting the ice caps feels like thankless work, but at least we have the support of the church. Speaking of which, I think we should conduct some rituals to celebrate our recent successes as well as provide us some spiritual guidance on what to do next. We began one of our most holy rituals, a ceremonial flag burning known as the Fire of Francis. The ritual was honestly pretty mediocre, but as part of the ceremony, Gnarly sucked on the exhaust pipe of a running car for 30 minutes, and it produced for him some very vivid visions. Gnarly came to the revelation that it's not enough for us to be polluted, the rest of the world
I
must
knew where
also
this
share
was
in this
going.
enlightenment, by force if necessary. Sharing our gifts is the least we can do. As they
Of
say, it
course
is the
he
greedy
used
man who
the image
stirs
of
up.
Nurgle. Of course. He was basically already spraying the plagues of Nurgle anyway, let's be honest here. I wouldn't be surprised if he somehow created the walking pox here. Ooh. Horrifying.
Strafe, but he who trusts in his filthy faith shall be enriched beyond all measure. Clearly this is divine revelation and definitely not carbon monoxide delirium. With that, we are now missionaries of pollution and our holy crusade has begun. We set out to nearby tiles to construct pollution machines. I decided it would be unnecessary for us to properly colonize these tiles. Instead, I placed my trust in the old adage, build it and they will come. After all, who could resist this paradise? The nice thing about this approach is that once a tile reaches 100% pollution, it actually begins to passively spread pollution into adjacent tiles.
I
Like a
hate
plague,
that.
we will spread across this map, slowly and then all at once. Despite the affordability of the pollution generators, we are running low on
Affordability?
components, and so I transitioned our slaves into the machining room to produce more. With time, we were able to achieve 100% pollution saturation on all tiles adjacent to our base. I've never been happier, but it's still not enough.
What?
Our neighboring states look down on our alternative lifestyle, but this is
I don't
nothing an
think they
industrial
do.
supply of chlorinated waste can't fix. Now they can't look at all. For the neutral
good lord.
territories, we utilize the inconspicuous technique of placing generators on their territory, but disguising them as strip mall installations. No one goes to strip malls and they smell bad, so they'd never know the
mean,
difference.
that is
But
true.
over time, their entire map would become just the right amount of disgusting. I also experimented with pumping toxic fumes through their ventilation systems,
Oh,
but this did not
God,
go over well
Reggie.
with test audiences. Regardless, we eventually managed to achieve 100% pollution on the 3 closest neutral settlements, and it was starting to take its toll on them. Their
I'm not
crops wilted
surprised.
and acidic smog embraced their colony like a warm, sweaty hug. The citizens fainted out of joy. Obviously, their
Fainted out of
chances of
joy.
survival are low due to their maladjusted genetics, but if they turn to the
Maladjusted.
Church of Filth, we can show them the way. You can come in the sink or sink in the cum. The choice is yours. Either way, it's time to regroup back at home base and decide how to best proselytize our more aggressive neighbors. Our closest hostile neighbors are the Thoku Treaty, the Concord Concord of Arroway and Gatch Firehome. Despite our best recruiting efforts, we're still a little undersized for a full-scale war. This means we're going to need to be a little creative if we want to properly pollute our enemies. That was when I looked out to our freezer full of toxic waste and realized what needed to be done. Why should we be hoarding 500 kilograms of human waste all to ourselves when instead we could strap it on a rocket ship and fire it at our enemies? By researching drop pod technology, we can craft a fleet of rockets, load them up with toxic waste, and then land the ships on enemy territory, at which point they will release hundreds of waste packs. Assuming our enemies don't have industrial-sized freezers on standby, the waste packs will then disintegrate and release a devastating amount of pollution across their entire map. After a quick time-lapse, we got our hands on a couple of transport pods. Originally, I was only going to make 2 of them, but then I realized there's not a lot of storage space in here, so I multiplied by my lucky number, 11.5, which gave us a total of 23 transport pods. Much better. But then, I remembered a carnival gypsy once told me I'd be crushed to death by a Ferris wheel on my 23rd birthday, and so that seemed kind of unlucky. I decided to err on the side of caution and double it and round to 50. We now have 50 transport pods, each carrying 10 to 20 toxic waste packs. Sadly, we don't get to witness the transport pods landing at the enemy base, since we will have no colonists there to observe the event. However, I decided to fix this problem by cramming Jeb in the rocket among the piles of toxic waste. Now, when it lands, Jeb's gangrenous corpse will tumble out of the transport pod and allow us to view the enemy base. So we loaded up our rockets with Jeb and as much sewage as possible and punched in the coordinates. There's actually a warning on these pods not to aim them directly at settlements, as they may punch through the roof of small buildings and crush people to death, but actually I don't really care. We launched the rockets and our clandestine payload is now en route to our enemies. The armada of airborne garbage trucks landed gracefully upon the enemy map, at which point Jeb escaped along with about 700 pounds of toxic waste. Understandably, the raiders were upset with this development and decided to engage in a mature conversation with Jeb about the importance of proper waste disposal. Unfortunate for Jeb, but that's what you get when you join a colony based on the quality of their group sex. Anyway, the toxic waste packs disintegrated over time, coating the entire enemy base in filth and detritus. Additionally, the disintegration of hundreds of waste packs eventually resulted in a bug infestation, which spawned a spellipede who proceeded to eat the local townspeople. You guys can thank me later. I'm sure they'll be able to clean the place up eventually, but for the time being, they can consider this a free trial of our religion. I decided that this was sufficient holy judgment for that settlement, but honestly, the Arroway tribe has been our greatest nemesis throughout this entire playthrough. They were always raiding us, messing up my shots, and I'm tired of it in the same way America was tired of Japan after Pearl Harbor. So we're going to do something special just for them. We're going to develop an actual nuclear warhead. You could even call it a dirty bomb. Surprisingly, it's not that hard. Apparently, a single person can craft it by hand. The only issue is we need a grain of antimatter. Since our particle accelerator is still in its infancy, we're going to have to acquire it from other civilizations. From my research, the best way to do this is to complete as many quests as possible and also explore the map for ancient ruins. It took months of questing to acquire one of these bad boys. Hundreds of people had to die in the name of our god, but eventually our persistence was rewarded with the holiest of relics. Now you might be wondering, what happened in all that time? Not a lot, really. However, I did come to the revelation that we basically have an infinite supply of power, and in my mind, this justified the creation of 30 mini-turrets to defend the base. So our society has been pretty stable ever since. Although, unfortunately, we did have one incident. Gnarly, one of our starting colonists, died of lung cancer. You see, he developed a tumor on his lung, and we took him in for surgery. Kylert was the doctor performing his operation, and during the surgery, Kylert suffered a mental breakdown as a result of being kind of hungry. This caused Kylert to forsake his Hippocratic oath by flying into a blind rage and beating his patient to death while they were still under general anesthesia. Everyone else was away at the time, so there was nothing I could do except laugh at just how much paperwork would be required to justify this degree of malpractice. Sometimes these things just happen. Regardless, we have our anti-grain warhead, and it's time to make our mark on the world. Like any good nuclear warhead, this one is launched from a short-range mortar. So I had the fellas pack their bags, and we traveled to the nearest settlement of the Arroway tribe. They have a pretty nice base, but not for long. We set up the mortar, loaded the nuclear warhead, and prepared for Judgment Day. It was strangely empowering watching all these godless sodomites milling about their base, completely ignorant to the reality that in mere moments, an unmedicated fiend would change their lives forever. It's time to fire. The mortar is a one-person job, and I awarded the honor of launching this nuclear bomb to our lucky viewer, Kylert. He fired the
Alright.
mortar, and the bomb flew gracefully towards its target, eventually landing and erupting into a fairly impressive explosion.
Good lord,
it
they
leveled
died
most of the
immediately.
buildings in the settlement, and what it didn't destroy, it coated in toxic sludge. I wasn't sure what to expect, but that was pretty nice. And to you,
Yeah.
Kylert, you should be proud of yourself. I know nuclear Armageddon may seem wrong, but you're a goddamn hero. In fact, take this video and show it to your grandpa that fought in Vietnam.
What?
And you tell him you're just as much of a hero as he is now, and you understand why he screams at night. Watch him as a tear of joy rolls down his face, and he unlocks his
no.
wheelchair and rolls himself into the ocean. You're a goddamn hero, Kylert.
No.
A goddamn hero. And with that, I feel we've completed our challenge. We've embraced pollution, thrived in it, worshipped it, spread it, and weaponized
about
it.
all
That's the
that,
full
but-
cycle of humanity right there. Now we can take our fellas back to enjoy retirement at the dump. I want to extend a special thank you to this month's patrons. You guys keep me going on these, these long nights of editing, and I really appreciate it. Finally, thank you for watching.
Okay, that was toxic filth, and yeah. That happened, huh, Fable?
I got nothing, but
I know you don't. So, thank you all once again, and I'll see you all later. Take care of yourselves, and bye-bye.
it's nice knowing you guys. I'm retiring today.
Oh my god, you're not.
Goodbye.
Like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you all there. Bye-bye. And yeah,
I'm retiring.
no you're not.